Module 4, page 14, first paragraph itself. Dearest Connie, by Christmas next time, this war will be nothing but a distant and terrible memory. I know from all that has happened today how much both armies long for peace. We shall be together again soon, I'm sure of it. Your loving Jim. So now this is the last paragraph of the letter that the narrator who had found the letter in that small tin box was reading. So now this is how Jim McPherson ends his letter. He's saying by Christmas next year he was hoping that the war would end and then all of them would go back to their respective families, and this would be just nothing but a terrible dream or a nightmare that has come to an end. Okay, so now part 3 of the lesson. I folded the letter again and slipped it carefully back in its envelope. I kept awake all night. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I drove to Bridport, just a few miles away. I asked a boy walking his dog where Copper Beaches was. House number 12 turned out to be nothing but a burnt-out shell, the roof gaping, the window boarded up. I knocked at the house next door and asked if anyone knew the whereabouts of a Mrs. McPherson. Oh, yes, said the old man in his slippers. He knew her. A lovely old lady, he told, a bit muddle-headed, but at her age she was entitled to be, wasn't she? 101 years old. She had been in the house when it caught fire. No one really knew how the fire had started, but it could well have been candles. She used candles rather than electricity because she always thought electricity was far too expensive. The firemen had got her out just in time. She was in a nursing home now, he told me, Burlington House on the Dorchester Road on the other side of town. Okay, so now here finally the narrator who had found the roll top desk, he was reading this thing. So after reading the letter, he silently folded it and he put it back into the envelope. And then because he read this letter all night, he was a little uneasy. He was not able to sleep, and so in the morning when he woke up, he had made up his mind that he would go in search of this place. He would try to locate this so-called Connie or Mrs. or Jim McPherson. And so the next day morning itself, when he woke up, he went to find out where this place was. And then it was just a few miles away from his place. And as he reached there, he saw a small boy who was walking along with his dog, and he asked that where is this Copper Beaches, house number 12. So the boy he pointed out to the house, and when this narrator happened to go to that place, he saw that it was a very it was in a real pathetic state. The house, it was a burnt out shell. It was hardly anything was left. It was burnt out, the roof gaping. There was hardly any roof over that house, and the windows boarded up, and the windows were all blocked with planks of wood, because nobody was staying in that house. And I knocked at the house next door, so because it was understood that nobody would be living in such pathetic condition, so our narrator, he went and knocked at the neighbor's house to inquire where the owner of the house could be. So he goes on to say that yes, there happened to be a lovely old lady, but of lately she had become a little muddle-headed. Muddle-headed is nothing but a term that is used to say that she had become a real confused person, and that is obvious because of her age. She was 101 years old, So that is as a result of her old age, and now she is not at that present place because she has been shifted to what do you say, a place where maybe a old age home, or she was shifted to a nursing home because she was saved when a house caught fire, and she continued to be staying there because now she was all alone. Moreover, her house was burned down. It was not possible for her to be staying in a burned out house, and the reason he was telling that the reason of the fire could be because the house caught fire because she used candles rather than using electricity. So then the neighbor also gave the address of the nursing home in which Mrs. Connie Jim McPherson was staying. So coming to page 15, I found Burlington House nursing home easily. There were paper chains in the hallway, and lighted Christmas tree stood in the corner with a lopsided angel on top. I said I was a friend come to visit Mrs. McPherson to bring her a Christmas present. I could see through the dining room where everyone was wearing a paper hat and singing. The matron had a hat on too and seemed happy enough to see me. She even offered me a mince pie. She walked me along the corridor. Mrs. McPherson is not in with the others, she told. She is rather confused today, so we thought it best if she had a good rest. She has no family, no one visits, so I am sure she'll be only too pleased to see you. She took me into the conservatory with wicker chairs and potted plants all around and left me. So he says that finally he located the nursing home where Mrs. Connie McPherson was, and there as he entered the nursing home, he saw that being Christmas season, everywhere was decorated. The Christmas tree also was there, which had slightly tilted angel right on top, and then he could see that all the occupants of the nursing home were all gathered there, and they were were gathered in the dining room, and all of them were having those party hats, and all of them were in a joyous festive mood. The matron, or the person who was in charge, the head, she also had a party hat on, and she also seemed to be in good spirits. And she also offered a mince pie to this narrator. And then she also goes on to tell that usually Mrs. McPherson, she didn't seem to be that okay today, so they decided that it would be better if she rested, and so they had kept her in a conservatory room, and that was where the matron was leading our narrator to. So and he says the conservatory with wicker chairs. Wicker chairs is nothing but furniture that is made out of dry, strong reeds, or in simple words you can say bamboo furniture. Okay. And then he saw that an old lady was seated on a wheelchair, her hands folded in her lap. She had silver white hair pinned in a wispy bun. She was gazing out in the garden. "Hello," I said. She turned and looked at me vacantly. "Happy Christmas, Connie," I went on. "I found this. I think it's yours." As I was speaking, her eyes never left my face. I opened the tin box and gave it to her. That was the moment her eyes lit up with recognition, and her face became suffused with a sudden glow of happiness. I explained about the desk, about how I had found it, but I don't think she was listening. So now our narrator, he goes on to tell that he wishes her, and then he says that he mainly came for a reason was because he had found a certain thing that belonged to her, and he thought that it would be appropriate if she had it. And then he opened the tin box and he gave the contents of that to her. Then he noticed that all the time this lady, she just had a blank expression, but the moment the tin box was opened and he placed it in front of her, he noticed what do you say a lot of emotions taking place in her. He noticed that at once her face became more attentive, and her eyes, all the time it was just a blank expression, but her eyes lit up with a recognition, and her face became suffused, and a face that that glow of happiness spread everywhere. And I explained, and so the narrator, he began explaining how he came into the possession about all this. And he says that all the time as he was explaining, he noticed that all this time she was not listening to what he was saying. For a while she said nothing but stroked the letter tenderly with her fingers. So he realized that she was not listening to what he was saying, but she was just with her fingers stroking the letter. Suddenly she reached out and took my hand. Her eyes were filled with tears. "You told me you'll come home by Christmas, dearest," she said, "and here you are, the best Christmas present in the world. Come closer, Jim, dear, sit down." So now now she was a lady, 101 years old, and naturally a memory also would have lessened, or she would have lost a part of her memory. And so she was not listening to actually what was the talk or what the narrator was telling her. She was all excited with what was happening to her. She got the letter, and then she thought that this gentleman who was standing in front of her happened to be her husband. And then she says that you told that you would come home for Christmas, and dearest, and now being Christmas time, she thought that it was her husband who had come, and she told him that this was the best Christmas present that she had ever received. So I sat down beside her and she kissed my cheek. "Read your letter so often, Jim, every day." So he said she mistook this young gentleman or the narrator to be her husband, and so she so the narrator just went along with the old lady's behavior. So he just sat down next to her and she kissed his cheek, and then she went she, assuming that this man is a husband, she started a conversation. "I read your letter so often, Jim, every day. I wanted to hear your voice in my head. It always made me feel you were with me, and now you are. Now you're back. You can read it to me yourself. Would you do that for me, Jim dear? I just want to hear your voice again. I love that so much, and then perhaps we'll have some tea. I made you some nice Christmas cake, marzipan, all around. I know how much you love marzipan." So then this lady, of course, because of her old age and because of her dwindling memory, she assumed that that man happened to be her husband. And then thinking that it was a husband, she was all very excited that her husband is there now, back to after the war. And she tells him that it is best that you only read the letter yourself to me, because she loves hearing his voice, and she wants to hear his voice again. And moreover, she would love to have that letter read out. And then she also goes on to says that both of them will have tea, and because it is the Christmas season, she had made the Christmas cake and the marzipan, which he had loved so much, and they would, have tea together. So this tells that, she had, because of her dwindling memory, she had issues with her mind, and her mind was playing tricks with her. She assumed that this young man who was standing in front of her to be her husband, and so altogether all this time she was all alone in that nursing home. But now with the arrival who she assumed to be a husband, she was altogether very happy, because she was of the opinion that he has finally come back home after the war, as he had promised that he would be home the next Christmas. So now the next Christmas, she had thought that yes, finally that Christmas has come, and so her husband is also back after the war, as he had promised that he would be back home the next Christmas. So with this end, I come to the end of our first lesson. Thank you, children. I hope all of you have understood each and every part of this lesson, and you are not having any doubts. And if at all you have got your doubts, that will be discussed in our Google session, live session. Thank you, children. Take care.